all down to you.
Thank you, Paul. Eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can turn out for a bit, whack them on later, but. So I'm going to talk to you today about our adventures in Mexico. So there was well, two members and myself and my other half went to Mexico to see the eclipse in April. So I'm going to try and cover a bit about what we did, how to view an eclipse, few results that we got, a few obligatory holiday photos that I always throw in, and then we'll have a look at the next few upcoming eclipses, give you an idea of where you want to go, and we'll also think about what you want to do there. So the first one was 8th of April. So we were in Mexico. Obviously, the eclipse crossed quite a swathe of America, North America, so including all three countries that it covers. So Mexico, USA, and Canada. Obviously, the 2017 eclipse came across basically almost like 90 degrees to this one. It was classed as the Great American Eclipse. Well, this one was billed as the Great North American Eclipse, just to get more people involved. But if you look at the track in North America, it was probably seen by more people. It went over some massive cities in America: Houston, Fort Worth, Dallas, all the way up to Niagara, through the middle of America. So I'll caveat the where I got the data from beforehand. So this guy, Fred Espenek, he's probably the guru on eclipses in the world. He produces loads of stuff. So he uses the Eclipse-Wise website, mysteryeclipse.com. He's also got a compatriot called Jay Anderson, who does all the weather side of it. So we're going to look at both of them to work out where we should be. And I think his website's eclipsesfile.com. So that's what I've gratuitously borrowed quite a few of the diagrams that we've got today. Key thing to think out is the actual the little green square here, or green sun. So that's the point where the maximum eclipse will occur, which will be 4 minutes and 28.4 seconds. So if you want a long eclipse, that's where you go for. But obviously, it's very difficult to get to those places. Sometimes they're in the middle of nowhere, there's no access to them, and things like that. So you've got to then do your best to get to those places, but also look at the weather forecasts and think, well, where's the best chance of seeing it as well. Here's just another slide aside. This is the Google map. So this site is brilliant. You can put your literally click on the map where you want to be, and it will tell you your duration, what the timings are going to be, all sorts of stuff like that. But it does show you the track of the eclipse. So it runs from yellow line to yellow line, from effectively west to east. Obviously, the red band in the middle is the path of totality. The blue lines next to it are the edges of totality. So if you're outside those, you do not see totality. And then the green lines at the edge is basically the edge of the partial. So the tip of Colombia and Venezuela will get a partial, a very thin partial. All the United States would get partial eclipse. Obviously, a few states in the middle will get the total. Just zooming in a bit so we can have a bit of an idea of where we're looking at. Most of the eclipse was over on land, was over North America, and a lot of people went to North America, especially around Texas. It was good prospects down there as well. And obviously, you can see here that this is an altitude map, so you can see where the mountains are. So over Mexico, most of it is in the mountainous areas, so you're at a higher altitude, which in theory can help because you've got less air that you're looking through, but it also can bring clouds, as we will see. So this is one of the eclipsophile websites diagrams. So this is showing the percentage cloud cover, the average percentage cloud cover that you would get for April in North America. Red is bad, blue is good, basically. Obviously, you would look at that and think, well, Mexico looks good, and if you get up to Newfoundland and the northeastern states of America, it's not so good. And here's a more of a diagrammatic layout. So you can see here that obviously Mexico is over to the left-hand side, Pacific Ocean, running through Durango, Torreon, which is where we were. Across the border into Texas, near Uvalde, and then obviously looking through there, it's the further west you go, the further east you go, the worse your chances are. But you do see it crosses quite a few fairly big cities in its track. So the other thing to bear in mind, certainly for North America, is El Nino. So obviously this is the climatic condition that affects weather and rainfall all the way across the UK, all the way across the world, but it does have an effect on cloud cover. So this is what percentage does it improve or degrade over the time. So you can see Texas, the chance is 20% less than average. Most of Mexico is probably 10%. Then as you go up into the northern states, it has lesser effects, maybe in the plus or minus 2%, which is probably insignificant when you're looking at eclipse. Because also eclipses can bring their own weather as well. So it's always an interesting one. So zooming in on Mexico, because that's where we decided to go, we looked at what the tour companies were offering. If we were going to America, we would have probably done it ourselves. There's quite a few people went and just did their own thing. It's fairly easy to do in America, finding a hotel accommodation, things like that. And that's how we did the 2017 eclipse. We did it ourselves. We had a van, we managed to get a hotel that was on the track, and we ought to work on the decision that really we don't want to travel on the day. Certainly in 2017 there were some horror stories of traffic jams that were 10 or 12 hours long. But since it was Mexico, we made the decision that we were going to go with a tour company here in northern Mexico, and some a bit of security that they will deal with the problems. As you can see here, there's two markers on there, GE and GD. So GD is greatest duration, which was the 4 minutes 28.4 seconds. GE is the greatest eclipse. I might actually look that up to see what it was, and that's the point when the moon is closest to the centre of the Earth. I don't know why it's different to the greatest duration, but it says it nearly always is. It wouldn't be if it was on the equator, so there must be something to do with the spheroid that the Earth is. And there's not a lot of difference between greatest eclipse and greatest duration. Certainly for Mexico, it was 0.1 of a second, so you're not really going to notice that unless you're frantically firing off 1,000 shots a second. So you can see here, Torreon. So we flew into Mexico City, did a few days around there to acclimatise, and then we flew to Torreon, and we were only there a couple of nights. So we flew in, did the eclipse, and flew out. It's a very industrial city. There's lots of factories and lots of factories, a mining area up there. Basically, we got shipped out that next morning. We did about 25 to 30 kilometres further north to get ourselves on the eclipse line. But if you'd have stayed where you were, you would have got totality, because obviously you can see Torreon is within the bands. Just another shot of a zoom in on looking at the altitude, so we can see we're at quite a high altitude, not as high as the mountains do go, and we're also in the hopefully the lee side of the mountain, which is why it got such good prospects for Torreon. So see the mountains here, and the weather tends to come from the Pacific coast. So everything we're seeing here, we think, yeah, this looks good. We're in the right place, and we will be there at the right time. And again, we can see here cloud fraction. So Torreon is definitely in a very low percentage, for maybe 10% cloud, and we were just to the north of it, fairly close to where the track was. We're about a kilometre off the centre line. But you can see that once you get into Mexico, your chances of seeing it are pretty good all the way across. So it gets up to 50% here, but you've got a 30% chance of cloud all the way through. So you have got a pretty good chance of getting it on average. So we stopped, this is Torreon. So we stayed somewhere around here in Gomez Palacio, and then Bermekilo is where we went. Just up the road. There was not a lot of traffic, surprisingly, or unsurprisingly. It's a very industrial area, there's not many people was in there. And we got a dedicated site that was to our tour group, which was about 700 strong, by the way. So this is where we were. So Bermekilo is just off to the left, and we were at the Universidad Autónoma Chapingo, which is the Autonomous University of Chapingo, looking at the arid. It's the university for the study of arid zones, because this area is very, very dry. You won't believe that looking at it. Well, so some of the green bits. This was the sports field. So this is basically what we were allocated. So we got the sports field. Some man people decided once we were set up, decided to run around the running track. And at this point, you're at over a kilometre high here. You're over 1,000 metres high, and they decided to go for a run. We didn't we? No. So, but that's where we were. So, right on the sports ground. There we go. So this is what we should have seen. So this is the greatest duration, and obviously we're not too far away from it. So we got 4 minutes 28.2. Fairly kicked off about what time was I? 11 o'clock, something like that. 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock. Yeah. 11 o'clock. So the parcel began at 11 o'clock. Thank you. Totality obviously was around about 20 past 12, and it ended 26. But the other thing to be aware of is the altitude. So this can cause you problems if you don't bring all the correct equipment with you. It can cause you quite a few problems, because you've got to get your neck and look up a telescope or camera lens that may be pointing up at 60-70 degrees, which is not fun, I assure you. So this was, as we got up at the hotel, this was the skies. Now, not ideal, but we did have a briefing in Mexico City before we came out, before we all flew out, and basically this was a prediction that we were going to see a bank of cloud that hopefully would move off by totality. This is the sports field, and the university very nicely marked it all out in roughly, I don't know, 2 or 3 metre squares, which everybody obligingly stayed in their little square. So we were up at the very northern end of the pitch, So basically behind the photographer was the football was the goal. We were right at the top because we were looking. We knew where the moon was, the sun was going to be. So we tried to get as far away from everybody else as possible as well, which is always a good thing because otherwise people stand up in front of your cameras and things like that. So which is it can be annoying. And you see, so actually, so that's my kit. And next to it is MSAS kit, and then there's another two. There's one here, and then there'll be another one to the side of us. There's another view with the other two. So that's my bar, Sam, and this was the secretary, Mr. Odell. So obviously at the moment we're not taking too much notice. This was before the eclipse actually started, although it could have been slightly after because we couldn't see anything anyway, as you can see. But the only good thing is there was some blue cloud on it, blue sky on the horizon. So everybody was hoping it was going to come our way. And you can see there's quite a few people down there. The university provided us with chairs and things like that to sit on and a packed lunch. Which we had, and there was also for some people, obviously the people on the field, the people doing the photography in the main, and there was a set of seats, tiered seats, where people could sit if they were not interested in that, they were just going to get ready for totality. Setting up again, you still see. Well, we can see where the sun is, which is good news, but we couldn't see the sun. So when we were setting up, at the moment we're trying to effectively align the mount. So the mount is over here. So we'll turn the lights on later and have a look. But obviously you've got to make sure it's pointed north, which you can do obviously with a compass or a smartphone nowadays, and make sure it's actually pointed at the right altitude, so it will point at the Polaris and therefore will track the sun through the eclipse. Unfortunately, the mount that I use has got solar tracking rate, so it gets you reasonably close. And I thought I took a lot of stuff when I go on an eclipse, but this couple over here have got quite a lot of kit and a tent that they've managed to either somehow get from home or they bought it in Torreon, which is always another possibility. And there has been occasions when people have said that people have dismantled things in the hotel room to make things work better on eclipse day. Not to be recommended, obviously. So looking at the different setups, so obviously here we've got a DSLR with a mirror lens on the front, and there will be a sliding filter for when we're looking at the sun, and obviously a cardboard sunshade is particularly useful because if you are in the sun all day and you're pointing your camera on the electronics bit at the sun for most of the day, it will get very warm and may stop working, or certainly not perform at its optimum. Sean here is just using the ball head, so he's just going to point and shoot each time. Other people use slightly different things. So this is another DSLR, Canon DSLR with a Canon prime lens. It's not a mirror lens like Sean's was. This is a 400mm prime lens. But this little gadget in here is effectively a slow motion control, so you can rotate it without actually having to release it off like with a ball head. So you can adjust it in altitude and azimuth without making it bounce all over the place or losing the sun, which is always a risk. Other things to look at, we have got obligatory timers. So normally you keep your hands away from the actual camera when you're taking photos. And the box here contains a solar filter, which we'll come to in a bit, because obviously partial phases you must use a filter. A bit more serious, Mr. Collinson's get up. So we've got a little portable tracking mount with DSLR, and again 400mm lens. Obviously trying to pull right at the moment, and we can still see the sun shade to get it off your camera. And obviously I did send an email out before we left and said, don't forget the sun's at 60 degrees, 70 degrees. Make sure you take a viewfinder if you've got one. And you can see here, Mr. Collinson has got a right angle viewfinder. In theory, makes it easier to track the sun, in theory. And that's it on that one. Another option for actually photographing the sun is you can connect your camera into a smartphone or a tablet and drive the camera and the eclipse sequence from the camera from your tablet, so it keeps your hands away from it. So as long as the sun's in your field of view, then you can take photos away from the camera, and then just reach in and shuffle it across so the sun's back in the centre. We can just about see here the sun's in the middle of the field. This was on the way out. This was on the way out, and we saw very little on the way in. So this is the point when it got we'll get to some partial phases to have a look at. Obviously this is my setup. So obviously discussing with Sean various things on the mount. Then you can see here Sky 90. There's obviously no filter on, no camera on the moment because I'm using it. Trying to get the tripod as low as we can to stop it vibrating as much. And a bit of weight, which in my case was the battery that I was using. And that's what I brought with me today, so going to look at that later if people want to. So this is what I use. So I use Takashi Sky 90, so it's a 500mm focal length. It's a fixed f5.6 lens. Use a Canon 5D3 camera. I set the ISO rating to 100, and then my exposure time typically is anywhere between an 8,000th of a second, which is about as fast as it will go, up to 2.5 seconds. Although due to the cloud that we had, basically anything between about 300th of a second and about 0.7 a second was useful. Everything else was either black or was completely washed out. The mount is the ZWAM3, so it's a harmonic drive mount. New purchase, but it will carry all my telescope and mount, but without any counterweights. Because otherwise, you have to start carrying counterweights with you, which can be definitely an inconvenience. Benbow tripod is quite a strong, stable tripod. It's a metal tripod, it's not carbon fibre. Barber Astro solar film for the partial phases, so that's what's on at the moment. And I will say there, before leaving the UK, assemble and test everything, preferably not at home, so you can't then go and pick something up or put something down that in a place that you think is safe. It's not going back into your bag. It's going to be going to your trip with you. I have to confess I failed because I tested nearly everything apart from my right angle viewfinder, because I'd used it before. I knew it worked. Unfortunately, I didn't have that camera at the time. I had a different kind of camera, and the size of the eyepiece slot is a different size. So hence I know how awkward it was to view the eclipse at 70 degrees up, because you have to use your eye. But I have found the relevant adapters. But that just reiterates: assemble, test everything before you leave the UK. If you need screws, Allen keys, always take spares, because you never know when you're going to drop something in the grass, which is easily done. And sometimes having that knowledge and experience of assembling your kit quickly can pay dividends. When we were in Libya in 2006, we got to the point that the guide said, get off the bus and see the eclipse. There was very few people saw first contact at that eclipse, and even fewer people actually photographed it. And it's only because we knew how to assemble our kit really quickly. We knew the order that you have to do stuff in, that we actually managed to get first contact in Libya, in the middle of the desert. There's a thing about eclipses, there's lots of deserts involved. So if you want to take photographs, so two things obviously, if it's your first eclipse, number one, see it, experience it. If you think you've got enough time or experience either taking solar photos of sunspots or things like that, have a go photographing it. This is the chart that you would normally use. This is another one of Fred Espinet's charts. And basically, you work out what your ISO is and your F ratio. So for me, it would be 100 and F 5.6. So this is the column that I look at. It only goes down to 4,000th per second, but my camera will do an 8,000th of a second. So basically, I can effectively pick up some of these extra bits. But there's a formula here which you can plug in. They give you the Q number, and the rest of it is all here. So you can effectively generate yourself your own version of it. So I generate my own version of it, which actually fits better for my camera lens, because these are full stops and I can do third stops on my camera lens, on the camera. So I regenerated it, so I know what mine will do. And the other thing is, I do fill on there. You see, I wrote on it this year. So where we are, so north and west, altitude, and then the final figure there, 5.83, is the magnetic offset. So if you're going to use a compass, you need to know what your magnetic offset is. So there it was effectively 6 degrees. And that'll get cleaned off, and next time I'll write the next ones on. So on here, that's why I was saying I go from roughly 8,000th per second to about 2.5 seconds. But in Mexico, the cloud didn't help, let's say. Obligatory warning, I've got to say this to cover myself. Unless you are looking at the total phase where there is no sunlight, you should have a specialist solar viewing filter. Now, that includes with your eyes as well. So if you have binoculars, they should be, both of them should be filtered. If you're using a telescope, it should be, the main objective should be filtered, and also any finders should be filtered. Camera lenses should be filtered. And for your eyes, there's a couple of things that you get nowadays. So you can get the Astro Solar glasses, which are basically the mylar film, so you can reflect them there. Or other ones are effectively the dark plastic, which will, there you go. So the dark plastic, so they again cut out both infrared and ultraviolet. And the usual rule is you put them down, you have your head down, you put the thing up, then you look at the sun, bring it down, you take it away. Because you'll all have looked at the sun inadvertently and got little discs on it. Well, that's not doing your eyes any good. And if you stare at them for a period of time, then it will not do your eyes any good. And it's also important to ensure that you check any filters before you use them. So make sure you hold them up to a bright light source and see if you can see any pinholes through them. If you can see any pinholes through them, throw them away. Do not think, well, I can sort it out later. is not a good idea. But you've only got 2 pair of eyes, so you only get 2 chances. And to that end, so I use, so the filters on the end of mine, I use the Bard Planetarium Astro Solar film, and I take a spare sheet with me. I pre-cut it out for the filter, but I always take a spare sheet with me, because you never know. If something goes wrong, I have damaged mine before on an eclipse. Fortunately, it was on the between 3rd and 4th contact, so it was on the way out. But I managed to get a small pinhole in there. But I don't know how I did it, but I had a small pinhole in there. It was fine on the rest of it. So it is important to make sure it is you keep your eyes safe. So we had a few shots at partial phases. Not enough, because obviously you want partial phases both to fine tune your alignment of your kit, but also to get the sun in focus. When I looked at the Soho and stereo images, I knew there was some nice sunspots on there. You can just see one here. I'm thinking, oh, that's ideal, because that is what you want to be focusing on. You do not want to focus on this edge, because this edge is 250,000 miles away, but this bit here is 93 million miles away, and you will see that difference in your images. It will be slightly out of focus. If you get on a sunspot, or if you can get a good look at the surface of the sun, you'll see the surface of the sun will be in focus. But the caveat on that is you need to be able to see the sun, and obviously we were significantly struggling. So this was one of the early ones. I think this was about shot 3, and I thought, well, it's reasonably in focus. I don't remember seeing the sunspot though, I must say, because the clouds were whizzing through as well. So it's not a static image. You're just trying to get something roughly in the right place. A bit further on, so another few minutes further on, we managed to get another one. A little bit less cloud at this point. And you can see that there's less scatter around the image, and the sunspot looks a bit sharper, a bit darker maybe, which kind of tells me it was in focus, but really you could only tell when I got home to the UK. A bit further on, again a bit more cloud was rolling in. So when we looked at the early photos, you could see the bands of cloud, and that's effectively what we were seeing coming through. So this was fairly low level cloud that we were chasing at the time. Getting towards the main event, getting to quite a thin sliver now. You're only 30 seconds maybe or so away from totality at this point. Unfortunately, the low clouds cleared, but we still had high cloud. But we did have the totality. Well, they're very slim. I think I've got one. Might be one to this. Oh, no. So just after the previous shot is when I took my filters off. At which point I stopped looking through my camera lens, because effectively I've got quite a bright chunk of sky, chunk of the sun still coming through. But we can start to see here. We can just see the edge of the moon. Yes, I've got a lovely dust. I've got a dust bunny there, and there's a hot pixels. There's 2 hot pixels on the frame as well. No, it's on all of them. So, and it wasn't there when I started. So, well, when I went out, before we left the UK, it wasn't there. So, I did try and clean it afterwards, but it's not the easiest of things to do in the deserts. So we are a few seconds away from totality here. You can see the last sliver of sunlight on the edge of the moon, and we start to see these lovely red prominences coming on. And obviously, your duration of the eclipse a lot depends on actually, when you're down to the fine detail, is whereabouts you are with relation to the moon. Because obviously at these points we're seeing the valleys on the mountain of on the moon, on the edge of the moon, or transversely we see the mountains. And then we have totality. See quite a few, as I said, we see quite a few prominences here, and you can see here that we've just lost the edge of the sun. So if you're looking, so at this point is when everybody's filters are off. You can look at the eclipse through binoculars, through your camera lens, without any filters. I did see a question on the BAA website. Was earlier this year saying even in totality you should have filters on, and that would shot down in flames because that would just be a black image. So got a very nice starting point there. So these are like quite short exposures, probably about, I don't know, 250th of a second, and I'll just run through the sequence. So long exposure, and we also move quite a way through the eclipse. So we've now got prominences coming through at the other side. So some of that was I got a bit of blurring on some of the images, and also the shorter images I was getting nothing because the high cloud that you can see around it washed everything out. Slightly longer exposure. Can't really spot the corona. This is probably about the best chance we've got to see the corona. So since we're at solar, coming up to solar maximum, the corona is quite chaotic. So you can see down here there's a gap here, but the rest of it is pretty uniform. It's not quite uniform. There are some brighter patches, but it's not like you would expect at solar minimum. Solar minimum you would expect effectively streamers just off the equators at solar minimum, but we're coming up to solar maximum, and obviously 2026 will probably be a similar sort of coronal structure. And obviously the corona will go out across your frame. Like this is a cropped version of the frame, so this is probably about a third of the frame in height, a third in width. So the frame will be normally out here somewhere to give you an idea of the scale. But on if it was clear skies, you would, the longer exposures would have been suitable. You'd have been pushing the corona out to certainly 5 or 6 solar radii easily. I think certainly in the past, Tony's had images where the corona disappears off the image, certainly north and south at maximum, or could go off to the sides. Another one. Back to shorter exposures now. This prominence that we can see here is one at the bottom was naked eye. You could see this with your eye quite easily. Because we're at the moment still looking at the top of it. It's quite a bit bigger than this as we run through. Obviously, we're getting closer to third contact now. really short exposure.
It's difficult because you're trying to compensate for the clouds with the exposure as well.
It
You
is.
can't just go through the,
No,
the sequence.
So I just ran my sequence.
Yeah.
So my sequence says starts at 8,000 a second, run all the way through
Yeah.
until I get up to about 2 seconds, and then come back down, and then go back up, and come back down. Because on my camera's got some preset modes, means I've got presets for diamond ring, so I can quickly flick back to the diamond ring exposure times rather than just scroll through and trying to work out where I am. Because when you're doing that, you've got to be looking at your camera. So I get away with that. I don't do that. But you can certainly see this prominence is getting quite big now. That looks better on my screen. Give it a few seconds to sharpen up on notice.
Are you still doing the 3 shots?
So I do 7. So I auto bracket 7, which is plus or minus 1 stop, but in 3rd stop increments. We can start to see here on this edge here. We just start to pick up the chromosphere coming through. So this is the very top of the solar atmosphere. It also means that we're probably getting quite close to 3rd contact. We can see here this prominence has actually got effectively a gap underneath it. At this point, I've got they're all the same exposure time, I think. Which will be about 2/50th of a second. So literally just before 3rd contact. Obviously, you can see the black gap under the prominence. So that was quite a big flare of prominence sat off the surface of the sun. But there's other stuff, some stuff up here as well. Obviously, we saw it at the other end. And again, just before, so my hands are off the camera at the moment, I'm just firing the shutter. And that's 3rd contact. So this is the point where the first bits of the sun they just start to peek through the valleys on the edge of the moon. Technically, this is it. You have seen the eclipse. Filters back on. Since I've done this a few times, I'll let it run a bit further. That's true. And then I've got the filters back on, so that was the point where I decided just after that there was enough sunlight coming through to put the filters back on. Then you can see here a very faint crescent just after the contact, so 30 seconds or so, and then we just run the sequence back out and just put a couple of them in. And again, we're fighting clouds. So what I thought was a really good sunspot group that we looked at earlier wasn't the one that I thought it was. Because there was an even bigger sunspot group on. We'd have seen that one in the running, would have had a really good shot at getting stuff in focus. But I'm fairly happy, to be honest, with what we've had.
You won't believe how clear the skies were in half an hour's time.
Yeah. So you can see here, this one is a lot brighter. The exposure times are the same, but this one is a lot brighter. So you can see the sunspot. So this was the one we were looking at earlier. But this one that was bang in the middle, pretty much would have been a lovely thing to focus on, but not ideal. But so the cloud, the cloud was cleared nicely just as we got to the end of it. So we could have done with we've been another couple of hours different, really. There we go. So that was the eclipse. If you're going to travel a long way around the world on trips, which we have been known to do, we always try to combine them with other things to see in the area. So obviously, if you're in Mexico, you've got the Mayan and Aztec populations, historical populations. So these are just a few shots of some of the places that they were involved in when we were there. So this is Xochimilco. So this is quite close to Mexico City. This is an Aztec. So this is from around about 1500 AD. And it's basically a canal system. So the people live on islands between the canals. And obviously it's a massive tourist draw. But also the local population in Mexico City go there, because Mexico City is big as well. It's 25 million people, something like that. So you're only half an hour away. So you get on a boat and have a basically it's a punt. So
Okay, I'll
yeah. I think it's one of these rules that everybody wants to be at the front, and that's what they're trying to do, or ram somebody else's. You can see here, so this guy's the punter. These guys obviously are trying to make money. They'll come up and play the what is it? Mariachi. There we go. Mariachi. Lost it for a minute. So they play the mariachi band for you and expect a few dollars. You've got to call. So after that, the next day we went the other way. So north of Mexico City is this place Teotihuacan. So this is a lot older. So the Aztecs, the Aztecs were, I don't know, 1500 AD. This is the Mayans. So they were around about 2,000 to 3,000 BC. So this is much older. So we would call these pyramids, they call them platforms, and they'll be built up over time. So they'll start with a smaller one and then they'll expand it and expand it. So this is Teotihuacan. So this is the temple of the sun at Teotihuacan. Obviously for either various things, sacrifices or astronomical related, looking where the seasons are, etc. And also on the same site is this one. So this is a different one. You never know, but this is a different one. So this is the temple of the moon, and you can see here the platform structure that you see. So it's steps, like a steps pyramid, we would call it. You're not allowed to go up them since COVID, but you're at 1,000 meters high, and it was a bit warm, so I don't think I would have wanted to walk up there particularly. From there, we headed south. So, well, from Mexico City, we went to Torreon, and then from Torreon, we came back south to the Yucatan Peninsula. So again, you're back into the Mayan area. These, again, are 2,000 to 3,000 years old, but they weren't really rediscovered until recently. So these were basically buried in the jungle, and a lot of these sites, the reason why we can see these sites now is that over the past 100 or so years that they've been clearing out the jungle and clearing what looks like mounds. So they'll say, oh well, there's a mound there, and it just looks like a mound of soil to us. But they said when they've had the radar over it, they can see actually the structure underneath it, but they've just not got round to doing it. They says there's hundreds and hundreds of years of work to clear it out. slightly different shape one. I think this had something, I think it's called, was it called a beehive?
Yeah.
Beehive, this one. I don't know if it had anything to do with bees. It's definitely a different shape to the other ones that we've seen over the years. So these were three of our travelling companions and our local guide. Or one of our local guides. Because we've got a big group, we've got loads of guides as well, so keeping an eye on your guide was important because otherwise you didn't get back on the right bus. So Cobh was inland. Tulum is almost like the Mayan port for the Yucatan. So we can just see here, you can believe me, but this was the Gulf of Mexico, so we're that close to the coast. So as you walk around the ruins, sometimes you're definitely looking out over the Gulf of Mexico. So it's a bit more organised this one, because I think it's closer to maybe some of the tourism. So there's a lot more nicely. They're not paved, they're gravel paths, but rather than basically a path that's been cut through the jungle. These are a lot more organised, but it's quite a small site this as well. So next day we went here. So this is probably the most famous of the Mayan sites, Chichen Itza, and this is the main temple at Chichen Itza. Obviously, it's obviously quite cool because there's lots more platforms here. Again, it was obviously used for ceremonial duties. Could even be living areas, because on top of some of them, there's no building. So I think it would have been a wooden building on top of some of them at the time. I'm no expert in Mayan architecture, I will have. But this one was more interesting. So this was known as the observatory. So this is where they did observe the heavens. It almost like it's got the right sort of shape. But actually it was a spiral staircase right up to the top. So this was probably about a couple of 100 meters away from, or maybe a bit more, about 500 meters away from the main temple. Uxmal. So we're heading now towards, we're heading westwards from like Cancun, we're heading across the top. So this is Uxmal, a couple of shots. This is the pitch, I'll call it the pitch for what is known as a ball game. So nearly all the sites that we visited had a ball game pitch. And there was, I think it said that there was teams of 5. And the aim was to get the ball, which was like, the thing was like a very dense solid rubber, through the holes. It's missing off of this side, you can see it on this side. So the aim was to get the ball through the hole and be the winning team. I'm not too sure I'd want to be on the winning team, and I certainly don't think I want to be the captain, because they were ritually sacrificed willingly. If they won, that was kudos for their family. So obviously you used to bounce up and down. And the other thing you couldn't use is you couldn't use your hands or your feet. So it was all elbows, shoulders, knees. So if it was the first go, it might have taken a while to get it to go through.
Lots of low score goals though.
I think they played until somebody won. Oh, because you had to have a sacrifice. So and this is one of the other sides. So this is actually quite high up. So this was the Grand Palace at Uxmal, but we're already well, the previous photo was taken from the edge, probably just turned around, looking down at the ground. So we are probably, I don't know, 20, 30 feet higher up here. So that's a raised platform that they've built the palace on the platform. Which is quite nicely kept, because we've got all the carvings in the on the actual buildings. It's not like in England where everybody had nicked all the stone, but in some places they did, because obviously the stone had been collected over thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. So if people wanted a bit for the house, that's where it used to go. Plankby was the last site that we visited. So this is actually in the hillier area. We're quite a way to the west now, probably I don't know, 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the way over towards the Pacific coast. And again, it's a site, but this is in a hilly area. All the rest of them are being effectively in relatively flat land, whereas this one isn't. And again, I'm up at the top of one of the pyramids. You could actually go quite a few of these. You can see here that you can go. You can't get in them, but you can go up with the steps. If you are not comfortable with irregular steps that are very steep and not very wide, they're probably about, I don't know, 6 inch wide, but they're like that deep. So they're irregular, and in most cases there is no handholds either. There's no barrier that you can get hold of. In some places there were, but certainly in this place there weren't. So, and this is Temple of the Sun. Another Temple of the Sun. Chuck that one in. So that was our adventures in Mexico. Now I'm just going to cover the next 3 eclipses. The last one we won't cover in a lot of detail at all, but 2026 and 2027 we'll try and cover it in a bit of detail. So 2026 is it's going to be an interesting one. We will see partial eclipse in the UK. Just here, greatest duration is here, so just off the coast of Iceland. But there are tour companies going up here. I've seen them advertising. If you've got a spare arm or leg, you can go up there. But it does skim across the top of Spain. So that's where a lot of the tour companies are already going. Again, here's a cloud cover. Hence you can gather why people are going down here, because this is where it's all blue, so you should have fairly good cloud cover. They do say some of the inland areas of Greenland will get it. The tour companies appear to be thinking about boats, because there is no accommodation down there at all, so they're all cruise ships. It's interesting to say in the 12th of August in 2026 it's going to be cloudy. So we'll see how that looks. But you can see here northern Spain, maybe just skims Portugal. Also the coast is probably cloudy, and we do end up into Mallorca and the Valley areas. So based on that, certainly we're thinking about trying to get into Spain. Fairly easy to get to. You can fly into Madrid, or you can Bilbao, Santander, Barcelona, Valencia, even Alicante. You'll be able to get into the track fairly easy, and it does go across the centre of Spain. I think some of the tour companies are going around here somewhere, but a lot of the tour companies are going in and out on the day, because there's not a lot of accommodation around here, not for big groups anyway. So they're doing stay in Madrid, drive up, see the eclipse, and then drive back. which will be interesting for them, I'm sure.
Those are some big distances.
Yes,
It's a half day, it's a day's journey on the road between Madrid and Santander.
yeah, so you're only, you're talking about 150, 160 kilometres usually. So this is the cloud amount. So obviously the bluer it is, the better. So the chances are, if you are just north of Madrid, you know, on the south side of the track, you will probably, or you should get an average of the better skies. But there's a few little niggles with this, which we'll just come to in a moment. This is the a numerical representation of it. So you could go to Siberia if you're feeling really excited. You could go to Siberia, insult with President Putin, and they'll send you there for free. Greenland ice cap does differ bits. Iceland is probably a non-starter, and then Spain, obviously, the further east you go, the better it goes. Then you get to Mallorca. At the bottom end. But there are a few caveats to this. So this is the centre line one. So you're talking probably 30–40% cloud cover, chance of clouds. Obviously north and south. So built out here, so you're talking 55%, but that's where we could see that cloud coming in from the Bay of Biscay. Obviously Madrid is out of the track, but that's down at nearly 25%. So that's kind of telling you want to be at the southern side of the track. So maybe not go for the longest duration that you can, being on the centre line. Maybe consider having a better chance of seeing it. Let's see something that's a little bit shorter. And even if you're fairly close to the edge, you'll still get 30 seconds or a minute or so. Quite comfortable. Here's a satellite shot from, I think it's 2009. One of the Landsat images. You can see where the clouds are. So that kind of tells you that if this is where the cloud's going to be, you're either here or you want to be probably up here. So Leon, Valley, Borges. So that sort of area looks quite promising, possibly. The problem is there's very little accommodation out there. We have our people trying to find something for us. I said this is where you want to be. So I've picked out here 4 locations. So the north coast, directly north of Madrid, the east coast, and over in Mallorca. And the thing to look at here is where the sun is. So totality is 10 degrees above the horizon on the north coast. So this is, if you're in Spain, that's the highest it is going to be. The further east you go, we start to lose a bit of time. So we've got 8 degrees. East coast, we're down at 4.5, 4 and a bit. Mallorca is 2 degrees above the horizon. So if there is any low-lying cloud around here, your chances of seeing it are going to be very low. You also need to make sure that you're at a site where you can see 10 degrees above the horizon, because if there's any buildings in front of you, you're not going to see it. And if you're a typical Yorkshireman, you like to get the most of your money, you want to see the whole eclipse, so it finishes there at 1.4 degrees above the horizon, and all the rest of them is actually set in eclipse, which will be some nice photos, but it's going to be quite challenging, I think, to see. I'm talking totality of 1:50 to 1:36. So relatively short, but you should be able to get a decent look at it. Maybe one of these where you're not going to try and take lots and lots of photos, and try and make sure you're in the best place you can to see it. This is not going to be an easier one. But it is relatively local. You don't have to pay an arm and a leg to a tour company. You pay to Ryanair instead. So if somebody said I want to see an eclipse, and came to me and said I want to see my first eclipse, I would not suggest that they went to 2026. I would suggest that they went to 2027. Similar time of year. So again, we're in August, a year later. Duration. So we're now 6 minutes and 23. So even if you're not on the centre line, you're still going to get a fairly long duration. And if you look at where it is, we're now over North Africa, does catch Spain. If Andy drives down to Almeria itself, he could just about catch it, just about, but you'd only be talking maybe 30 seconds duration. Obviously, if you get further down to Gibraltar, you'll get a bit further. The greatest duration here is interesting. It's going to be interesting. So in August in Egypt, I assure you it's going to be warm. It is going to be warm, but where it is probably where most of the tour companies are going to go. Quick look at the predictions. So the chances down here, it's reasonably close around North Morocco. Tunisia is maybe not so bad. If you're feeling brave, you can go to Libya. I don't know which faction you'll need to grease the palms of, or you've got a big chunk of it in Egypt, which is where I suspect quite a lot of the companies are going to go to. They are going to Tunisia, and they're also going to Tangiers. And there's lots of companies out there that do stuff. So these are the typical predictions. So if you're over in Tangier, so you're over on the western side of the track, the earlier side, so it's a little bit earlier, you're getting up to totality around about 37, 38 degrees. Tunisia is a little bit higher. When you're in Luxor, or just north of Luxor on the track, you're at 81 degrees, so you're nearly looking straight up. So unless you've got clouds above your head, your chances of seeing it are going to be there. And you can fly into Luxor. So I suspect that quite a few of the tour companies will go there. There will be the caveat that I bet they've already booked their hotels. So, but you may find that you could just get a generic trip to TUI or Thompson's or whatever. You might be able to get to Luxor on those dates, because they own their own hotels, so you can't hire them unless they're paying their own. So quick look at where it is. So these are the true North African bits. So Saint Almeria there. So you've got Petas de Mar and the Cabo de Gata, Almeria, obviously, Malaga, Torremolinos, Fuengirola, Marbella, down to Gibraltar. You're all going to see it. You see Tangiers. So Tangiers is really close to the centre line. So that's going to be probably quite a good site. Maybe the breeze off the coast will help. Tunisia, as we saw, I don't think it's particularly a tourist area. This area, I think the tourist areas are higher up in Tunis, but you will be able to get to those areas, and they are relatively stable. If you have a break, you go to Tripoli in Libya. Libya just gets the edge of it. Only downside is you can't drink in Libya. It's a dry country. Even if you're in the port, it's a dry country. And we followed that religiously when we were there. So this is Egypt, and I know Mick was speaking earlier. So Luxor is here, so it's just off the greatest eclipse. Coast is not that around. So is that it? Oh yeah. So Mick said he's going there, so he's going to go dive in and see it from underwater.
Not having a filter.
Yeah, don't do a filter. So I think a lot of people will be in this band just north of Luxor. So And sometimes the tour companies prefer that because you don't have to travel on the day. They'll say, this is, you're at the hotel, go and find yourself a spot and set up. If you're lucky, you might have a balcony, but if the sun's going to be at 81 degrees up, I don't think unless you're on the top floor, you might have a problem there. So you might have to disappear into the grounds of the hotels. They might take you off because it is just, I think the centre line is just north of Luxor, so they may have arranged somewhere or further, just outside of Luxor. Normally with like food and things like that for during the day. I can't remember what time it was. What time did I say it was? So it's, yeah, so basically it's a morning eclipse, it's a morning, so this is UT, so you're going to be adding a couple of hours to that, so it's going to be around about dinner time. So they'll probably let you run the eclipse and then get the locals to put the food out would be my.
It's going to be around midday, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be hot. So that's my prediction for 2027. 2028, I've only got one shot, and this is 2028 is Australia. And a lot of Australia is fairly clear of clouds. It is quite difficult to get to this bit.
Isn't Broome in that?
Broome's up there, and you might find that Alice Springs is not far off here as well.
Yeah.
So that people might go to Alice, and obviously Darwin's. Darwin, or is Darwin? I can't remember which way Darwin is. But so I think there will be there, but this is serious distance, as you said. So getting somewhere, but at this end, if you're willing to take a higher chance on not seeing it, is you're not far off Sydney. You're not far off Sydney there. I think it might even go over Sydney. I don't know if that one's Sydney or that one, what it is. But just to whet your appetite. But my prediction is if you want to see an eclipse in the next few years, 2027 is by far your best chance of seeing it. And that's me done.
Thank you very much. Gary? Once again, as always, entertaining and informative. Could I ask you to stop sharing your screen, please? And we'll go back to gallery view. Could I ask somebody near a light to turn one of the bags on front, the bubble of the illumination?
I'm stop sharing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that big red button, sorry. Big red button.
There you go. There you go.
Very short. Anyway, all right. As always, questions and answers. So, digital viewers, please, or online viewers, can you put a digital handout? And in the room, as always, just scroll for £50 note and throw it in this direction. And
I'll do it for 20.
and so, to kick off with, totalities are always short. But
The longest is about 7.5 minutes. So
from first contact to fourth contact.
first contact to so normally first contact to second contact is about an hour and 15. So then you've got the same on the other side. So you've got about 2.5 hours typically.
Yeah, so you've got to go prepared that if you want to see the whole of the eclipse.
You've got to go prepared. What you tend to find is that people will. So the tour companies will try to get you there probably, I don't know, an hour before the start of the first contact, so people can get the equipment set up and everything else. People will quite happily watch the partial phases on the way in. They will see totality, but as soon as totality is over, that's it. People pack up and start getting on the coaches, and the coaches disappear back to wherever they've come from. We tend to stay to the bitter end. but you've also got to be able to pack your kit up because there's not normally many people left right at the end. Some people say, well, it's got to a very thin, very close to the end, maybe 10-15 minutes, and they'll pack up. But it is a 2.5 to 3 hour exercise. You need to make sure that you're hydrated, fed, sun cream, sun hat, because it's easy to. You're so busy concentrating on setting stuff up and aligning it and everything else, you forget about yourself. If you noticed, I'd got long sleeves on, long legs on, so just to minimise that. I'd not got my hat on that. But then again, it was we couldn't see the sun, so I wasn't too worried about it. But later on, I'd done my hat out, stopped my head burning.
Okay, I think my head is
there a reason you do single shot on video?
No.
Okay.
People do video it. People do video it. It's about being able to control your aperture.
Right.
So if you have a look on YouTube, Nick James, he uses a video. So I think he uses a Sony A6 camera, and he runs that in video mode. So he controls it and then basically increases the exposure time. I'm not too sure how they do that on the A6, but so they do it. And other people do effectively little handheld cameras. They'll just stick them on there, because some people will say they'll use a camera lens or a small telescope for the detail shots, and they'll have a video camera with a wide angle, so you pick up the ambience, as it were, of the eclipse. So you'll see it go dark because you think the shadows coming at you at about 1,000 kilometers an hour. So if you're looking the right direction, then you will see the shadow come across over a few frames. So people do different things.
Yeah. Lots is just making a comment that you can't bracket on video.
They don't bracket on video, but what they'll do is they'll start off at, I don't know, thousandth of a second, and effectively they'll have 1,000th a second, and then they'll change exposure up to maybe 500th, and then they'll do it at 250th, and then we'll work so far up, and then we'll come back down.
I didn't mean a continuous video, I meant a video stack.
You can do, but it is moving all the time. You can do it.
Yeah, well, people take over
Oh yeah,
and they take videos with that.
yeah, but that's the sun is stationary effectively for them.
Of course, yeah,
We've got the moon that's moving, so what you'll get is a shadow at either end.
Yeah.
If you're not careful. But I think if you've got enough frames, if you've got a really high frame rate camera, colour, if you did bursts of maybe a couple of seconds, you could stack pretty well.
Just trying to
Yeah. Well, it's also more things you've got to take.
yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah, it just a thought, you know, you were set up on this football field.
Yeah.
Now, when the last eclipse was in America a couple of years ago,
17.
I was watching the pictures on the TV, and I thought there were an awful lot of annoying people around with mobile phones and putting the torches on. And did you ever have any problems with that?
We don't, because we were. Well, we would have had words with them, but because our site was dedicated to us, there were no members of the public.
So monitored properly.
Yeah, and obviously the pre-eclipse briefing which we had in Mexico City, the warnings go out. If you cannot turn off your flash, do not use the equipment.
Yeah.
So making sure that even people with small cameras, if you're not sure about it, what they do say is electricians take over it. So basically, if you're not sure, you take over it. Whereas mine doesn't have a built-in flash, and obviously DSLRs you can turn it off. But yes, it can be a problem. It can be a problem. I remember in '99 when we were in Cornwall, it was completely clouded out, even worse than that. And we were at a bay, And as you look round, when it was totality, as you look round the bay, what you could see was the flashes. But it's public area, you can't stop members of the public doing what they want.
Taking photographs for nothing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's. But if you say, if you're on your own area, then you're okay. In 2017, we were in the hotel car park. There was another couple of groups, but we were all well spread. We didn't get any hassle.
Are any, you use a digital SLR. You've got a control ones.
Yeah.
And you said that there are three presets.
Yeah, so the camera itself has got effectively 3 custom modes.
Right.
So the custom modes I set is custom mode 1 is set at 1250 of the second, which is for the partial phases. So that's when the filter's on. Custom 2 is for diamond ring. So it's looking at trying to get exposure time right for diamond ring. And then custom 3 is effectively preset at the bottom of my sequence that I will run. So I'll start at well, it would be an 8,000th of a second, but it's plus 4 stops, 4/3 of the stops, because I auto bracket over 7. So I do on and then below 3 and above 3. So it's set at the on, and then I will roll effectively. I roll my scroll wheel to change the exposure by effectively 7 marks, and then take another 7 shots, and then roll it, and then take another 7 shots.
So there's a lot of manual work.
There is, you can get software that'll do it now. A guy we're talking to at Horncastle, he used software, so he had his fully driven with software all the way through. His problem was it wasn't focused.
Jez Robinson.
So Nate had already answered it. We just get onto it there. My question was, I've read that you can fully automate. You can script it from, milliseconds to changing your aperture and points and so on. And as you've just answered it there anyway, but I just wondered if you'd seen any other people doing that. If any other people had fully automated the eclipse capture.
Yeah, so there's I think there's some stuff that you can run effectively off a mobile phone. The ones that I've seen have run it off a laptop, so it's laptop software, and they just effectively connect the camera via USB or via Wi-Fi nowadays. They just run the sequence, so they basically just set it going, and that's it. They leave it.
I've got several other questions. Has anybody got any other questions?
Well, just wanted to, you're obviously in full manual mode.
Yes.
Could you use aperture mode? Let the exposure time be determined by the camera software?
No, you can't, because the amount of, once you're in totality, the amount of light is fixed. So this is a fixed aperture lens.
Yeah.
So you would have to. So you still want to do different exposure times.
Yeah, but bracket down in the stops, which was effectively increasing the exposure times.
I don't think it works quite like that. No. I think you have to use effectively. So with these that are fixed f focal length, a fixed f ratio. I think you have to. I'll defer to Tony if he's around. But I don't think it has to be bracketed on your exposure time.
I think Tony is around. But he's muted. Well, if he wants to jump in, that's fine. So you talked about practicing. Obviously, no eclipse.
Correct.
So how do you practice?
Well, so number 1 is practice setting up your kit. So often I will disappear into the garden. I will take my bags, everything all fits in my bag. I'll go, take my tripod, sit in the garden, set it up, and I should not need anything else out of the house. If I need anything out of the house, it has to go back in the bag. So that's one is about setting it up, and the other thing is you can then run the partial phases. So you can still look at the sun. You can practice your focusing. So if you know there's a big sunspot group on, you can go and look at that. And obviously, you can run your sequence through from, I don't know, 8,000th of a second up to 2 seconds. Obviously, at the bottom end, you're going to get very little, if nothing. But as soon as you get to probably around about 1600th of a second, you'll start to see stuff. And then effectively, as you go to the longer exposures, you'll just completely burn out the sun. But you will get used to that sequence of using your kit without looking at it. Because that's the trick, is you want to be able to know what your camera's doing or what you need to do to your camera without having to stop and start peering at the view screen or stuff like that. Ideally, you can do this like that and you can watch. So it's a case of so for me it's just a case of rolling the scroll wheel on 7 and then I hold the trigger release on me remote down until I hear it 7. So the only thing I'm doing is counting the 7s, and the rest of the time I'm looking up. In fact, I did take a shot. Obviously, I didn't add it in, so I took a shot with my tablet in the middle of the eclipse as well. So because it was long enough, if it was a lot shorter, then you kind of you don't really want to give up time like that. But there's lots of other people doing shots. So Mick did shots, Sam did stuff, Sean did stuff. So and people, the smartphone generation, there's a lot of people just shooting smartphones. So there's lots of stuff out there.
So you've got all this lovely kit.
Yeah.
You've got a baggage allowance. How much is it? How much does it all weigh?
Well, the camera, the scope, and the battery go in my hand luggage.
It's still got
That's 10 kilos.
That's 10. Oh, yeah, I've got lenses as well, so I don't get to 10 kilos hand luggage. Normally, my hand luggage is about, depends if I take a laptop or not, 6 or 7 kilos, and my check luggage is 23. That's what we're allowed. So I am normally just below 23. Because it's not actually that heavy. The mount, obviously the tripod all disassembles, the mount's in there. I don't need any counterweights, which is why I went for that one.
Counterweights in your pocket anyway.
I have done that before and get told off by security. I've done that before, counterweights in your pockets.
Just in case you get bugged.
But a lot of it's all about what you've got. So, but if Mark's still on, but so I went over to Mark's. So these are effectively custom rings and a custom plate. So the mount comes with a dovetail, but then that stands your kit even further off. So trying to get the scope and all the way as close into the centre line as possible. So there's 5 or 6 mil there. So getting that really as light as you can, and you've just got to be creative with what you wear.
Remembering as well that you actually have your carry-on and your cabin if you pay for it, and they're both 10 kilos. So you can actually load up your under-seat bag with 10 kilos and your cabin luggage with 10 kilos as well. I've done that before.
Yeah.
That's without going for checked-in luggage.
Yeah, you can.
And they never weigh your carry-on, by the way. I've had 20 kilos in it before. So long as it fits, they don't care.
We've had our carry-on weighed before.
Yeah.
We've had it weighed before.
Yeah.
So we are careful that we stick to the guidelines.
Yeah.
And the other thing we have to be aware of is that we're flying into Mexico City with flew British Airways. British Airways say, oh yeah, you can have 23 kilos on this and you can have 10 kilos on that. But then as soon as you go on to internal
flights are less.
you can have problems. And I certainly checked with the tour company we went out with last time. Well, they arrange all the flights, so you don't know who they're flying with. What you'll find out is they'll say, "Oh, you've got a flight at this time," and you might not even have a boarding card because they'll be done as a group. So in some ways that helps because they average the weight of the group.
Okay.
But in other ways, if they picked you out and said we want to check your weight, then you've got to be a bit careful. So I made an explicit point saying, can you confirm that we can take 10 kilos hand luggage on all internal flights? Because obviously if you can't, then that affects what you do. You have to rethink about what you do. But it is doable. It is doable. So I think mine was about, I put all my astral gear in my case and then away in my case, and I think that was about 15 kilos. So I've got 8 kilos of other stuff to chuck in there. So we're nearly always on like lightweight, easy dry clothes. So you can always either get them into the laundrette, or you can wash them in the hotel room and they'll dry overnight.
Okay. Unless anybody's got any further questions. I think we've worked Gary hard enough.
I do have a serious question, if I may.
Go on.
So how do you find, I know Mick obviously said earlier you put your counterweight in your pocket and you sort of get told off by security and everything.
Oh, yeah.
I have been categorically told I have to check, a nice lump of steel on a metal rod in. How do you go about that?
Well, so in the past, I checked it in. So my previous mount, what we ended up doing was a small Takashi mount, and that needed a counterweight. But what we did is we made the counterweight also the battery holder. So we got about, I don't know, half a kilo of batteries, because there were the big D-cell batteries, and we made the holder for them and that held, effectively counterweighted all the scope. Probably doesn't only counterweighted that scope, but the harmonic mount that'll carry 8 kilos without the counterweight. So that's one of the reasons. So the top side of it is about 5.5 kilos, which is all hand luggage pretty much.
Okay, Ross.
I don't think it quite answered my question, but I get the gist of getting creative.
You've got to get creative, and the guys, the people who were at the side of us, the ones with the tent, I noticed later on, I was chatting to them after we packed up, or when it was getting close to the end. I noticed his counterweight looked a bit odd, and what his counterweights were water filled. So he got water filled counterweight. So I asked him, where did you get it from? He says, oh, you get them off Amazon. They're for people who want to do lightweight exercises. So basically they are effectively water dumbbells.
Yeah.
So they were using the little water dumbbells, and he made a sleeve for them so he could hold them in the right place. And that's how he did it. And so you get creative. There has been people saying, well, you could just get like a pot and fill it full of sand and then fill it full of water and then just hang it from the end. As long as you can hold it in place, you can do things like that. Other than that, if you are taking counterweights and mount, like the mount goes in the check luggage, or counterweights, they really have to do
that's essentially what I'm doing at the moment. But maybe I misheard you. I thought you said you take everything on hand luggage, but no, that's fine. I've 3D printed some that I can fill with gravel or sand. I just can't get enough gravel or sand in it at the moment.
So if you can make it waterproof, then water will fill the weight. So it will fill all the gaps and you will get more weight. But as I said, from me, I don't know if you can see, if I drop back into the frame. So everything from there up, so all the telescope and the camera go in hand luggage. The mount and everything down from there goes into check luggage.
Okay.
You don't really have a lot of choice, and obviously, fortunately, the scope compressor's quite small, because otherwise you would start to exceed the maximum dimensions on your hand luggage as well. So people have been known to put telescopes in the check luggage as long as you pack them well.
Well, what I'll do afterwards, after the news and that sort of thing, I'll show you the kit I'm travelling with at
Yeah.
the moment. Maybe we can have a bit more of a chat.
Yeah,
I don't think you're gonna have that opportunity, Loz.
We
Because
best
we
crack on with the news then.
ladies and gents, we worked Gary hard enough, and we are running out of time. Can you join with me in giving him a big Mexican Switzerland? Thank you.